Right, Tipperary hurlers finally got off the mark for wins this season. Delighted to say I'm joined by Tipp FM commentator Stephen Gleeson. Stephen, how are you doing?
Good, Shane.
You were at that game at the weekend, the fairly convincing win over Westmeath. A red card early in the second half for Killian Doyle kind of guaranteed, but well, it was already a formality because it was 2-14 I believe, at half time, and from then on it was a bit of a non-runner. So, what did you take from that game, from Tipperary's first win of the year?
Well, I suppose they got a big score on board, right? That's going to stand to them in the league to start with. A lot of the younger players got some game time into them. That's a huge positive, really. The likes there of Mark Kehoe, you had Jake Morris there playing as well, Keane Darcy, who contributed in a big way. A lot of those guys got game time, and that's really, I suppose, the biggest positive, I think, and just getting games into players that are funneling back as well. You had Noel McGrath coming on in the second half there for Tipperary. Callanan got his first start, and I suppose a lot of the players are probably a little bit rusty, but they're coming back into it now. And like, to get that first win, you kind of feel that the early season is gone now for Tip, and you're straight into kind of what's going to take place from now on, which is, I suppose, the main hurling, really. First two games were close enough, but Sunday, really, it was over before halftime as a contest. Coming down towards the latter stages of the first half, Westmeath had the ball over on their end line. They played it across back to the goalkeeper, and he just tried to play it out again, out to the 21. Got caught with Seamus Callanan coming in on top of him, a couple of the tip forwards in there. That ball was taken off them, and Darcy finished that to the net. And from there, really, it was all Tipperary. So it wasn't really a huge challenge on the field, but at the same time, to get that win, to have a nice, comfortable victory, I think it just tees them up nicely.
And just a couple of those younger players. I see Brian OMeara is named wing back. The experimentation of Alan Flynn, who was named midfield. I mean, you might tell me if he moved to different positions, how did he go? Keane Darcy, of course, killer one man. He scored 1-1, and like you mentioned, Mark Kehoe already, and Jake Morris, who I think everyone would expect to be the most likely sort of shooter to step up sooner rather than later. But some of those young lads, maybe starting with Brian OMeara.
Yeah, Brian OMeara, great game. He's steady in the half back line. Every time the ball comes to him and he gets it, he's kind of looking, where am I playing it? And I think he's really one that's going to have a long career with Tipperary over the next 10 years. He's fighting hard now. It's a tough job to break into that Tipperary team at the moment. If you look at that half back line last year, Seamus Kennedy was there as well on Sunday. He was very strong. Paddy is going to be a certainty. And you have a few more there, like Ronan Maher can operate as a full backer and the half back line. So you have a lot of options for Tipperary really there. But OMeara is a new one now. And I think that OMeara, he won't be far off it, really. I think if he can continue with a positive league and then just do well in training, I'd say he could be chanced in the championship, and he will get a go in the Munster Championship. And then it's just about taking your opportunity. So OMeara is one that really stood up last year for Holy Cross in the club scene, and of course playing under Cahill and Beavens as well. And he is very close, I would say, to making, if not the starting 15, to making the team on match day, as in getting on and getting game time as a substitute. Looking at the other lads up front, they're similar. That's the thing, really. You've got a little bit of diversity there in Tipperary, in that you've got Ford and Callanan, probably the two big score getters up there. And then you've got John McGrath, who's going to be another sure thing. So you're probably looking, if you were to take the forwards as a group, you're probably looking at maybe one spot available for Morris, Kehoe, possibly even Bonner coming back. So who's that going to go to? Like, you'd have to say Morris is probably in the driving seat in terms of getting scores, in terms of opening up when he gets the ball and trying to play it across the field. Kehoe is very similar, does a similar type of job there. And Darcy is kind of like the other two, but that little bit further behind and probably a bit greener. But he did well on Sunday now, and the three of them contributed in a big way. But again, the Westmeath challenge wasn't there to really get a test of them. Having said that, Westmeath's fullback, Tommy Doyle, was brilliant, Shane. He was absolutely class, and came out a lot of ball first half and second half. Angus Clark, very good centre back as well for Westmeath. But they were under constant pressure from Tipp. Tommy Doyle, incidentally, 83. Westmeath, beat Tipperary in the league, and there was a Tommy Doyle playing for them at full back as well. And I saw that one in the match programme on Sunday and thought it was gas that the same name popped up. But he was excellent. But the Tipperary forwards were running into space and a lot of angle ball. But when the sending off came in the game, it was really Noel McGrath operated as sort of a sweeper or spare man in around 6, and he just sprayed ball to the forwards. And every forward shone in those circumstances because the ball was coming to him loads of time and room, gather turning over the bar.
So we know this weekend it's going to be Waterford and Liam Cahill coming back to town, which is kind of a funny little subplot to the whole thing, especially with how much he's won with the minors, the under 21s, and then the under 20s as it became. But just first of all, just to reflect on the 2 previous losses before the Westmeath game, I think one of the big kind of themes of it was that Liam Sheedy was trying out players. Limerick brought all-stars onto the field, and Tipperary brought on young lads that people wouldn't, especially outside of Tipperary, wouldn't have really heard of. Do you get the sense that this is all just about finding players, and even getting to the knockout stages of the league isn't all that important to Liam Sheedy?
Yeah, I get the feeling it's probably maybe rest a couple of the older lads. Like Brendan had that long campaign with Boris Elite to the final. Noel McGrath made his first appearance on Sunday. So it's maybe rest these lads and throw in these young fellas and see how they react. Paddy Cadell was doing well now, below in Cork as well. In the first half, had a couple of pints got before he was substituted. Decent run as well with UCC in the Fitzgibbon Cup there. You have Brian O'Meara consistently there now throughout the league. Craig Morgan came on again on Sunday. Thought we'd see more of him in this league at 4, but Sean O'Brien is the preferred option there at the moment. But Craig Morgan is another of that All-Ireland winning under-21, under-20 group that will step up, I think, as well. So you have a lot of those young fellas just getting game time there. And the league, I don't really think Tipp are all that bothered about the league really as such, as in terms of trying to win it. But at the same time, they're likely going to find themselves in a quarter-final if results the next day go their way. And you don't know where it leads to then, really. And it is another chance for the younger lads. So I suppose this league is just giving the younger players time to bed into the team, get starting days out for Tipperary, and get them more comfortable with that surrounding and the big day and the big event. And they're doing that so far. There's a couple of them we haven't seen yet as well. Ger Brown, Hurler of the Year, there a couple of years ago, under 21, under 20 as well, playing very well before. And we haven't seen a lot of him, and he's been kind of laboured a bit with injury over the last while. But there's a lot of them are kind of pushing through now, and they're going to be there going forward. So really, the older fellas have been kind of rested a bit. We didn't see Paddy on Sunday. Noel McGrath made his first appearance coming on. But bringing on those younger fellas seems to be the thing. And in fairness, too, to those that are there, mid-20s, the likes of Barrett, Ronan Maher, Jason Ford, they're all stepping up in this league. Ford was excellent on Sunday there, winning a lot of ball. Barrett the same in defence, bursting through. And they're really the leadership group in this league, I would think. But of course, you're going to see Brendan back for the championship, and you're going to see a couple more come back in, like Paddy, who wasn't there on Sunday. So the younger fellas probably will get game time in the league. But having said that, Shane, I think this game against Waterford is the real start of the league. It's the spring has started. The days are getting some little bit brighter. All of a sudden, next Sunday, there's going to be a real bite in that game. You have the 2 Liams as manager. Liam Cahill was one of the favourites to get the Tipp job before Sheedy stepped up. And you're really going to see a real cracking game, I think, next Sunday now in Thurles. And Waterford are going well too, and they're one of the best coaches in Ireland there, and Mikey Beavens as well.
One thing that I'd have a little bit of a concern about is, you've named a lot of good young players, and because of the amount the Tipp have won underage in the last few years, there's definitely a bit of talent there. I just wonder, when it gets to championship, it feels to me like it's going to be pretty much the same team. And this whole idea that if you're not making changes or finding lads to step up, that you might be in a way taking a bit of a backward step. When Tipp won the All-Ireland in 2010, fast forward to 2013, that qualifier in Nolan Park, and I think it was something like 13 of the same team. And I just wonder about that. Do you feel like we're going to end up seeing the same Tipperary team during the middle of the summer? Maybe Bonner will come in, maybe Dan McCormick is going to come back in, Brendan Maher come back in, and you'll essentially finish with the same team. And then from that point of view, is there a small bit of a concern there if under 20 and under 20 All Ireland winners can't break into that team?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think there's probably going to be limited openings in the team, maybe. So you will have the likes of Morris there, Kehoe, the Bonner, all going for maybe one position in the team, and maybe there's a slot there in the full back line available as well. And Craig Morgan, you'd have to say, is one that would have been seen as someone that could break in there. If you bring in Paddy Cadell to the half back line, someone else might drop back to the full back line. So you do have some options. But yeah, there's none of them guaranteed starters really, which is very rare, I would say, if you go back through the years and look at Cork there. A lot of the under-21s have made it through, like Dara Fitzgibbon there or Kingston, and they're established. Limerick, the minute they won the All-Ireland, they were, pumped into the senior team, and 7 or 8 of them, and they just swam when they got in there. The likes of Kyle Hayes and that, who were young players. And like Kyle Hayes played in the minor All-Ireland final in 2016 against Tipperary. And of that Tipperary team that took the field that day, which was a team that won that All-Ireland in 2016 in the minor final, none of them really have made it through. So, like, of that group, you'd say Ger Brown, Paddy Cadell, Kehoe, Darcy, and Jake Morris would be the front runners. Maybe Craig Morgan as well in that group. But there's none of them guaranteed starters, and I suppose that's a nice position really for Sheedy to be in, because he's got an awful lot gunning for 15 places, and I'm sure form will have to come into it then. But again, as you said there, the team last year, it'll be picked maybe more so on experience as well as form.
Because I would think that was one of the things, a reluctance to make these changes that led to ultimately a fairly bad beating in the Munster final against Limerick last year. And I know we can definitely say Cathal Barrett was injured that day. Bonnermacher, who of course didn't feature for the rest of the season, and Tipp could win the All-Ireland without having to call on him. That there was, is there sometimes too much reluctance to throw some lads in, and maybe relying on some guys who have delivered for a long, long time, are still really good players, but you can see John Kiley is given a huge amount of time, game time to players. But like last year, he threw Will O'Donoghue into the team, even though Darragh O'Donovan, who had been brilliant the year before. And he's making constant changes in what still looks like a really strong team. Whereas we can see Sheedy is definitely giving other lads a chance this year. But from that point of view, I think that's why everyone has Limerick as All-Ireland favourites and Tipperary second at the moment.
You think that Tipp will reach a gear later in the year where they'll just run out of legs, and the younger players coming on won't have the experience of the big day? Is that where they're coming from?
I think there is an element to that last year, I think the team that Tipperary finished up with in the All-Ireland was that was fairly much the team, not far off the team that I was calling for at the start of the year. I thought there was a reluctance to make the changes and bring through a couple of, like for example, Seamus Kennedy, who had won it in 2016.
I was playing in 2016, really. He started then.
Yeah, and I think he even scored 2 points in that All-Ireland. But he's a 6'2" athlete. Barry Heffernan probably a 6'3" athlete. And Tipperary probably waited so long to get those lads into the team. So it's that kind of thing of waiting. There was no need to suffer such a heavy Munster final defeat last year, I kind of thought. And it probably waited too long to make those changes. The one thing is, because so many lads are getting a chance during the league, there is a chance of, the only problem is that they're not overly impressing, in the sense that the way the team fell away against Limerick and Cork.
Yeah, I think you're seeing it this year that the younger players are really getting that chance, and maybe there's an element there that it's about building up the strength and conditioning to ensure that these players are at a certain level before they're thrown into that cauldron of championship. But I think last year's team was definitely picked with more experience in mind than given youth its chance, really. And this year, I think there'll have to be a couple of positional changes and movement, maybe a new player coming in here or there. James Barry, of course, was one of the regulars last year. He's not part of it this year. So, his place is going to be there. That's interchangeable, really, I suppose, with Heffernan and Ronan Maher full back. So I would think there is a position available in defence, and probably a position available in the forwards within the Tipp team. And, they're the two that all those lads are going to be fighting for, really, going on the fact that maybe if everyone that played the way they did last year plays that way this year. The Munster Championship before that final, Tipp were going grand. There was no real fear of it. But that day in Limerick in the Munster final that you mentioned, like we did get a hockey in that day, really. Limerick were on fire that day, and they would have been hot favourites in the All-Ireland final against Tipp. But at the same time, Tipp are going into this year champions, and they're in the enviable position of just waiting, I would say, and timing their run perfectly. So I would say a lot of the training is more individual rather than collective, as in Brendan Maher, his run is going to be timed for the summer. Paddy the same, Noel McGrath the same. First time he came on was the second half against Westmeath the last day to just kind of get rid of the cobwebs from here on in. But the younger players like really need to be shining in this league if they're going to step up. And like it'll be interesting Sunday to see how many of them start against Waterford, because you have Cahill and Beavens as the management team for Waterford, who would have brought through a lot of these young players into the Tipp setup and really, got them established. And like Beavens is a phenomenal coach, started with my own club up at Church back in 2014, was absolutely loved there for a couple of years as he was, excellent coach, and moved on from there into the Tipp setup. And himself and Liam Cahill, I think they'll really want to win this one against Tipperary. They have a couple of wins under their belt in the league. This will be a huge test for them going to Thurles on Sunday. And it'll be interesting to see, does OMeara start? Does Morris, Darcy, Cadell start? And can they establish themselves? And at this moment in time, like, there's none of them playing badly. So I would think that you will see probably a team that's hard to pick for the starting team for the championship this year for Tipp, and that's a good sign, really, but it remains to be seen if we have to play Galway as well. We're going to get another chance to see them, and it is very early days, the first two rounds of the league in February, because Tipp had an extended break, remember, and they're really only getting back, I would say, into the form now and into the swing of things. So Tipp are probably timing their run a little bit differently than other teams because they were there up until the end and won it last year as well. So looking at the next day, I would think the young fellas will get a chance again next Sunday against Waterford. And look, it's up to them to take it at the end of the day.
I'd say I enjoy some of the interviews that Liam Cahill has done over the years. For example, was it 2016 or something like that, when he was saying that he had mammies and daddies on to him about their young lad not being on the panel, and everyone thinks that they're geese or swans, and he wasn't going to send soft hurlers up the line up to Michael Ryan. He'll probably be bringing that sort of thing down to Waterford too, won't he? That whole, I'm not here to mollycoddle you sort of vibe.
Yeah, definitely, and you're kind of seeing that already with the changes within the panel. But I think the players will respond to them. Like the team the bits I've seen already this year of Waterford, they're starting to play a lovely style where it's like 30-yard passes, let it go long when it suits, short when it suits. Like you can just see Mikey Beavens' sign over that team really at the minute, and himself and Cahill have a really great way. And I think that once they get the players playing the way they want them to play and thinking the way they want them to think, I think Waterford could have a really big year. And if they buy into that, like, they're not that far away. They got to an All-Ireland final in 2017. Granted, they fell off the year after and last year as well. But, I mean, this year they win one game in the championship, and it's more than they've done in a couple of years. So it's a kind of an upward trajectory, I'd say, for Waterford again. And, if the players buy into what he's doing, it'll be a really good year for them. I mean, the players are there. I mean, Ozzy Gleeson, you're looking at the new player there, Desi Hutchinson as well, did very well last year for Ballygunner. Like, there's a star back and forward, and then all of a sudden you're still looking at 6 or 7 probably from that 17 team that are of a really good age, mid-20s, that are in their prime to push on. So like Waterford, they're not going to be that far away, and I think for that reason alone, and the fact that they are going to be seeing themselves as coming team again now, especially after that tight win against Cork and the last day against Galway, next Sunday, that's where there's a really big test for them. And this Munster Championship, they're not thinking it's beyond them at all. I think they'll be well in the mix there, but obviously Limerick are that little bit clearer. I mean, look at Limerick. They're a bit like Kilkenny of old. Every single time they go out to win, and they just seem really driven. Every ball is fought for really hard. The last day, Callanan blocked down late in the game. Another player you might say wouldn't make that challenge, wouldn't make that run. So I think that they do have this mentality of win every single game, and that little bit of an edge is what Limerick probably have on the other teams at the moment, or is probably why they're favourites for the All-Ireland in a lot of people's eyes. But look, Tipp will time their run, and I think it's all about the championship for Tipperary. But for Waterford, it's about doing well in the league and then surprise a few in the championship. And like, that's going to be some game when Tipp go down to Walsh Park now for the first round of the Munster Championship, as well as this Sunday when Waterford comes to Thurles. So there are two games I'm really eager to see anyway.
Let's talk about the Tipperary footballers, because it's 4 games into Division 3, two losses. I mean, the latest against Cork at the weekend, a draw and a win. So just above the relegation zone, but a win or two can turn things around and get back into the push in Division 3, because you look at the teams that are in second place, they're only 2 points ahead of Tipperary, and Cork are well clear after winning every game. What's your read on Tipperary footballers so far this year?
They're without a couple of key players from last year. First off, Mikey Quinlivan isn't there. Lee McGrath has gone travelling, and they're huge losses. And the Lockmore player Lee McGrath really just was a big asset for them last year. But who they do have this year is O'Brien playing very well in the middle of the field. They have Robbie Kiley starring at centre back, and then they're after finding a couple of players in the last couple of games really to step up. Rian Quigley against Cork the last night was super. Young player, came into the team, got the ball, went in, kicked it over the bar from 30 yards. And, add into that, Sean O'Connor, a young player, scored a very good point as well for them the last day. They hit 21 points against Cork. It wasn't enough. They were leaking at the back. Now, they had kept scores low before that, but it's so tough in Tipp football, Shane. You've got good players, and then they're gone. Like Stephen O'Brien went to the hurlers for a while, came back again. Seamus Kennedy is with the hurling team. He's one of the best footballers in Tipperary, if not Ireland. Noel McGrath, brilliant footballer as well. John McGrath, brilliant footballer. Bubbles, class footballer. They're all with the hurlers, which is fair enough. But who the footballers do have is they have a committed bunch really this year, and they have a lot in their favour. But there's been a drain, I suppose, of the best players over the last 5 or 6 years, and that has really hit them. And it still is hurting to some degree. And I think that's why they're in Division 3 rather than higher. But, it's all about the next game for them really now. It's all about going up to Longford, getting something out of that. If they play the way they did against Cork, they're capable of getting something out of this year's league and pushing up towards the upper half. But I think Paddy Christie and, David Power, Charlie McGeever, they're looking at this as more a long-term thing, to build the players, get them ready now for the championship, and to grow with this team over the next year or two. There's a lot of younger players coming on to set up and into the scene, and that's really going to help them. Sean O'Connor, Rian Quigley, Maloney from Drummond-Inch. These lads really are probably going to be there for a couple of years now, and building is the key. They have a couple of stars there, like John Maher, fullback, is brilliant. A brilliant hurler as well. Pick the footballers rather than the hurlers. And, he's probably one of the best club hurlers in Tipperary and is brilliant at fullback for the footballers. And it is just about getting a couple of wins, getting the confidence, and see where it goes. They're a better team than Division 3. Whether or not they'll emerge from it is going to depend on, the results away from home. Derry is a tough result for them to take, really, because that was a game they were expected to win. Could have beaten Cork the last day, very close finish, but lost it again. That's the problem with it.
Just to talk about that Cork game, it was 12 points to 1-6 at half-time in Tipperary's favour. What happened in that second half? And Cork hadn't been scoring goals. I think they'd scored 1 goal before this game and then 3 against Tipp.
Yeah, they ghosted into deep. They were kind of running at Tipperary. So you had, whenever a Cork player came in from the 65 and would solo for maybe 5-6 yards, all of a sudden he had an option on his left, an option on his right, and Cork just seemed to kind of funnel through with big numbers going in attack, and they always seem to have an extra player over. So Tipp were kind of caught. So I think Cork will be a force when they run at teams, really, and that's really what they did with Tipp. Found the gap, and they just seem to have an extra player over, and it got a couple of goals via that route the last day. Tipp were the better team for a lot of the game, kicked some super points, especially in the first half, but Cork really had runners going at Tipperary and were able to find the gaps in behind, and that's the worry really, I suppose, when you're Tipp, that you're kind of doing well in one end of the field and it falls flat the other. The last first couple of games they were doing great in defence and trying to build the attack. This time around it was attack and push forward, and they were just leaving gaps at the back as a result. So it's just about getting that balance right, but there's a lot of work going in behind the scenes, and David Power is probably the right man now to steer them in the right direction. And it's a big year for Tipp football, Shane. 100 years since Bloody Sunday. Tipp won the 1920 All-Ireland final, and it is about really using energy positively like that, I think, this year, and getting a win in the Munster Championship and pushing on and seeing can they challenge Cork and Kerry again is a huge thing, because we've fallen back a bit underage. They're probably 4th or 5th in Munster now, whereas Tipp were minor All-Ireland football champions in 2011. So, and up against the Dublin team that has a lot of the current Dublin seniors in it. So it's just been a kind of a decade of ups and downs, losing players and trying to get back going again. And currently, if they could just stay in Division 3 and maybe look in the next couple of games at maybe pushing for promotion down the line and then building for the Munster Championship, I think that would be a successful year.
And then you're part of this 1920 commemoration. Can you explain what's been going on and even the process of trying to make sure that the 100 years is marked?
Yeah, we've had a lot of things really the last while. We're the Bloody Sunday Commemoration Committee, and we've been in business, I suppose, since 2018, trying to plan for the next 6 months and how to commemorate this properly. And there's a lot of things coming up. There's a lot of lectures taking place. John Flannery's in Nina on the 9th of March, and then Michael Foley will be giving a lecture as well later in the year. Paul Rouse as well, all about Bloody Sunday, I suppose, just to kind of broaden the awareness of it. And then we've also got grave remembrance ceremonies throughout the summer, and that'll be at all the graves of the players of that era, and that's going to take place really across the summer months. But it is all leading towards November in Croke Park, and there's going to be a game between Tipp and Dublin, and the game will start, I think it's 12 minutes into the game, the time that the game finished in 1920. So it'll be from there until the end. And Tipp and Dublin will play in the jerseys of the time. And then next year, the Tipperary teams will wear the white and green jersey. It'll be the goalkeeper jersey when Tipp line out in blue and gold. And it'll also be the alternative strip for the Tipperary footballers for the year. And as well as that, just to remember, I suppose, as well, Michael Hogan's image will be in the sleeve of the blue and gold jersey going forward. And that's something that we're very happy with in the commemoration committee. And it's, I suppose, carrying that image and that team really through time is the key. So I suppose what we are doing is remembering and trying to build the knowledge of it, and just remember the past, I suppose, and heading into the future really. And there's a lot of things in play at the moment. There's on Dushlán the end of March in Brew, and there's a lot of planning gone into that as well, and that's going to be, I suppose, a narration and a musical journey through it, so that'll be a great night for people as well. But it's all geared towards Tipp and Dublin taking the field in 2020, November 2020, and that's going to be ahead of the Australian rules game. And our committee is pretty strong now. We have Seamus McCarthy, former Ireland compromise rules manager and Tipperary football manager, Endo O'Sullivan, who's PRO of the Friends of Tipp Football and the football board. Michael Power is there, the treasurer of Tipp County Board. I'm the PRO. John Flannery, Pat Bracken, historian as well. And we've a lot of different people there. JJ Crowley from the Grange Muckler Club as well. So it's all about remembering Tim Hanley as well, who does a lot of work and did a lot with commemorations before. And it's about remembering and pushing forward for that and making sure that Michael Hogan and the memory of those that lost their lives are remembered in Tipperary and beyond.
Well, best of luck with that. It sounds fantastic and definitely something that needs to be commemorated. So well done with that. And thanks for joining me here. And sure, look, I'm sure we'll chat again very soon.
Sound, Shane. Thanks, Mel.